If you are seeing this, that means that it is Wednesday again. Thank you so much for stopping by this week's episode of Worship Wednesday. I do not take it lightly. I do not take it for granted. I am so thankful that you continue to come back week after week to watch what God is doing in and through my life, but told through a profession of dance, and I am glad you're here. This week, it's actually interesting because I feel like if you aren't new here and you've been watching the last couple weeks, I've been I feel like more mellow, more pensive, more like contemplative, maybe a little more down, less energy. And it's honestly my earnest attempt to try and push through, to try and praise through, and to try and carry out the commitment I've made to myself and to God. And I'm not gonna lie and say that this has been easy. And I'll also even give you one further and tell you I've been actually quite frustrated. And in attempts to try and really power through, I feel like my frustration has kind of morphed into some version of numbness, and like I've just begun to feel disconnected all over. And if I can be honest, it makes me more frustrated and it's also kind of lonely. And so in efforts to try and power forward and power through, I really have to sit with myself, sit with God, and really pull from what strength He is giving me, because this ain't in my own strength at all. I say this to say, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave is the name of the song, but it also is what I feel like my heart has kind of been echoing and screaming out and declaring. So this is actually the second video from the beach. And if you remember, I gave you all a disclaimer, or if you're new here, I will remind you. I will let you know. If you're not new here, I will remind you. I'm going to put the disclaimer here. I'm happy to say I made it to the beach and also danced at sunrise, which made it that much more beautiful. And not just like scenery wise, but like spiritually, it was just wasn't that many people around. I really felt like it was just me and God in a place where I knew I would find Him. I knew where I would hear from Him because I've done it before. And so it was just so good for me, especially because like I really needed a break. I really needed to take a step away, and it just felt good. It felt right. And so I'm so grateful for that. I don't know if y'all know this, but dancing on the sand is hard. Like, who needs leg day when you can dance in the sand? So I will say this. You watch this dance. Do I stumble? Probably. I also did two on the beach. So one of them, did somebody walk by with their speaker playing and I kept dancing? Yes, because I wasn't doing it again. At some point, did a garbage truck pull up down the shore to pick up garbage, and so you can hear the beeping? Yes. Yes, it did. Did I stop? No. No, I did not, because I think my legs would have not forgiven me for quite some time if I had to cut it off and decided not to continue and then start over. Okay, so now that that's out the way, I've always loved that song. And I feel like the reason why I chose it as the second song to dance to on the beach was because sometimes you get in seasons where nothing makes sense. Like, I literally have said audibly out loud in prayers, Lord, there's no way you told me to do this so that that would happen. Lord, there's no way you directed me or instructed me to do this and that is the outcome. How is this my reality if I'm doing X, Y, and Z? And like the reality of it is God don't owe us no explanation. Like the season that we're in, the time that we're in, what we are enduring, God don't owe us a why. We owe him our obedience to follow through and to go in faith and trust the journey. But he doesn't necessarily have to explain to us why we are encountering what we're encountering. Nor does it have to make sense. And that's something that I am intellectually understanding, but like emotionally and spiritually still struggling with. But the one place, the one time that my life makes sense is when it's me, my tripod, and a speaker. And even more so, kind of what I spoke to on the last beach video, is when my feet are in the sand. And so I'm really struggling with, how do I take that feeling, that strength, that encounter with God and make it last? like there is no magic power in me being on a shoreline. And although worship is very powerful, the way I feel when I worship isn't meant to be isolated to the moments when I'm dancing. The same way that if you go to church on Sunday, you shouldn't be preached happy and then walk outside the door and be right back to living miserably. There's something undeniable about an encounter with God. There's something undeniable about being in the presence of God, and when you feel like he's speaking to you and when you feel like you're being heard. And sometimes prayer might feel laborsome or unresponsive, and then there are times that you pray and you know for sure that something shifted, or you know for sure that something was heard, you know for sure that something broke. And what I am trying to give myself, or believe God for, I guess is more appropriate and correct, is that those moments don't have to be far and few between, because God is present everywhere. Because God can move even when I'm not at a park somewhere, or even when I'm not at a beach somewhere. Like, he can still be that comforter. He can still be love. He can still embrace me. He can still be my father. There can still be that intimate connection as I'm sitting and doing the mundane tasks at my job, as I'm running errands on the weekends, as I'm laying in bed at night trying to rack my brain and reconcile the things that I'm seeing versus what I'm believing God for. The fact of the matter is, the truth is that God is there through it all. His word tells us that he will never leave us nor forsake us. So there is no light switch that switches off when I step off a beach or when I leave that park. And I have to remind myself emotionally of things that intellectually and mentally I know. So when I say I don't want to leave, it's more so a state of mind and a place of feeling, more so than a physical location. And if God is omnipresent, then those experiences, those encounters aren't confined to the situations or the circumstances where I feel him the most. I just feel like for anybody else that is kind of feeling a little bit more heavy, first of all, put it down. He don't want you to carry it anyway. Stop holding on to it. It's not doing you any good. Put it down. But also, and I think this is for me, maybe it feels heavy because you're supposed to slow down and take inventory, to reevaluate your why, your purpose, your level of understanding, your level of commitment, your level of faith, and to really hone in on, key in on what you're believing God for versus what God's promises are to you. And I don't mean like tangible or monetary or materialistic promises, but I mean like the promises he has for your life, the promises he has for who he wants you to be, the promises he has in his word that gives us instruction, that gives us correction, that gives us conviction, that gives us a path. So this dance is because I want to get to the place where I feel like I'm carrying him with me everywhere I go. Especially in my lowest moments, especially in my darkest moments, especially in the moments where the world is quiet but my mind is really loud. Like, I don't want to leave. I did not want to leave that beach. And it wasn't because there's some miracle in the sand. And it wasn't because the sun was any different than any place else than on that shoreline. But if I can believe that, I can also believe that the same God that made that sand, the same God that rose that sun up, the same God that came and encountered me on that beach, didn't stay on the beach when I went back to the car. So my prayer for me and my prayer for you all is to remember that God goes back with you in the car. That he goes with you in your coming and your going. That he is not a physical location, situational God. And if you really let him in and open yourself to embrace him, he's not leaving. You're not leaving. You are moving forward to carry out what he has equipped you for in those intimate moments. In those moments where you feel him really strongly and really intensely, he is giving you the strength to go on. Because when you feel him less, that doesn't mean he's far gone. That doesn't mean he's disappeared. Maybe he's giving you what you needed in that moment already, and you just need to ask the Holy Spirit to bring it back to your remembrance. Oh, God. He just did that because I be telling y'all, this is real life. It's dance, but it's real life. All right, Lord, I hear you. And I'm going to leave it there for this week. Thank you so much for being here. This has been your weekly episode of Worship Wednesday. As always, I pray that something that was said or some movement that you saw gives you something to talk about with God today. Hopefully it gives you something to go out and share with the world so that you can explain the reason why you believe. I hope and I pray to see you back here next week. And thank you all again for stopping by. of his